There comes a time in everyone's life where you find a car that you're not entirely sure you should actually like. It's almost as if you're turning into a hipster, but you don't know if that's okay. Like, you want to brag about the fact that you bought a quadristeer Chevy, but you're not sure you should, mostly because the quadristeer portion of your Chevy is broken. Sean. Or maybe you found a Galant that had a VR4 that just rips, but nobody cared because apparently the 3000 GT also had a VR4, and that was the gifted child, which meant the Galant just kind of scooted on by. But who's laughing now, bud? There's another car out there that carries a little bit of that same mentality. A car that we're not sure if you're supposed to like or not. And let me tell you about it because you probably should, especially if you're looking for a budget sports car, all right? I'm Alex at Fine Instagram, and today we're gonna be talking about a car that laid the foundation for a company that have had more ups and downs than the people that watch Game of Thrones between season 6 and season 7, okay? A car that has been able to always be there for you and occasionally surprise you in a good way, kind of like one of those fun uncles that never really left your side. A car that was pretty damn gorgeous for a while and did all of the things right that you could want from a car. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna be talking about you wanting to own a Nissan Sentra SE R and including the Spec V. If you're just jumping into one of these videos, hi, be sure to subscribe so you can keep
watching videos from us.
It'd be nice. But we do have aftermarket wheels, tires, and suspension for your newly acquired Nissan Sentra SE R Spec V or otherwise. Or if you didn't hear, we actually just started our brand new giveaway, which is none other than with our very own wheel company that we've launched, Artisa Art Formed Wheels. So we've partnered up with Continental Tire and Fortunato to do a full build giveaway. You can check out the sweatshirt. We got it on right now. And of course, if you pick something up, you get automatically entered in to win. It's gonna be a pretty awesome time. But on top of that, we'd really appreciate you guys taking a look at Artisa Art Formed Wheels. It's our very own brand that we started, 5 designs, deco directional, super lightweight, and your support would mean a lot. The Nissan Sentra started its life in 1982 as a subcompact car that would replace the classic Datsun 210 as the non-imported variant here in the United States. Gone were the days of Datsun and entered the days of the new generation Nissan, which, although it's known in the world relatively stable-ish economy these days, was still a relatively very new manufacturer.
Back in the 80s.
It was new, it was hip, it was fun, and it was different, okay? This was coming off the era of Japanese cars getting imported into the States, and most of them being insanely small and well-efficient cars. The car itself was also called the Nissan Sunny, though, or the Nissan Tsuru. But here in America, we determined that Sentra was pretty good enough, okay? And while it was introduced during the highs of the EPA regulation, this actually helped, specifically with Japanese importation of cars. It did well because of its lightweight, its tiny motor, and great gas mileage, which is why it just fared so well in the United States. And as the car gained popularity, Nissan continued to expand on it with fancy trims, all right? Fancy colors, all right? And even color-matched bumpers on certain trims, which, if you look back in the 80s, was quite the big frickin' deal. Apparently, plastic bumpers were common, and if you got them painted, you were bougie, dude. You had the big baller spender money. And you could say things were getting pretty serious around these parts, right? The production would remain in Mexico and sometimes transfer overseas, but ultimately come back to Mexico for quite a few generations of this relatively simple, efficient, cost-effective sedan. Nissan would introduce something unique, something different almost every single time, especially as they jumped into the 3rd generation, as they really started to get some money and capital behind the platform. And finally, they'd introduce the one vehicle that most of us care about, the Nissan Sentra SE R. It was a banger, it was good, it was fun, it was hip. Nissan was pretty much like, let's actually have some fun with this car. And the Nissan Special Racing Edition, Special Edition Racing, was introduced in 1991 with an SR20 DE engine in the new trim and would hit 140 horsepower, which was still pretty slow, but it was fun because it came with some technology and some mechanics that gave some potential automotive enthusiasts of a Japanese car something different for the US consumers. Still a relatively conservative platform, but the SER was a fun way to go to Aldi's. It was a fun way to go pick up a pack of smokes because apparently that was a thing back then. The 3rd and 4th generation didn't have much love though, even with the SE and SER trims. You got the SR20, but you didn't get the turbo. I'm not sad about it. I'm just disappointed. The 5th generation SER was owned by an old friend named Monty in Eau Claire. Okay, he wanted to race me when I had my 3000 GTSL, and it was candid smack talk, was because we were both like 17, and we ended up never racing because we just didn't want to. But we talked a lot of smack on Facebook. I'd almost argue that it could have been MySpace back then, but it wasn't. But I did have a little bit of a sweat because his car had a red badge and mine didn't. But it didn't matter because the 5th generation would also see the SER SER with a newly redefined, not as much horsepower as the 3000 GT, but still close, QR25DE motor, which was 165 horsepower, 175 foot-pounds of torque, and had a lot of just great things coming to it. The fifth generation was actually a very good-looking car, and you could get it with a 5-speed manual, which was fun, but mostly, like, why you bought it was that it was a budget, good, fun sports car that was front-wheel drive. Unfortunately, Monty didn't just have the SER. He had the frickin' SE R Spec V, baby, a more sport-oriented performance version of the Sentra SER, which was scary when you're 16 and or 17 and you don't even know what that means because you didn't Google it like you should have. It had a 2.5 liter, 175 horsepower, 180 foot-pounds of torque. They gave it another gear and they bumped it up with a limited slip differential on a front-wheel drive car. It had sharper suspension, better wheels, firmer bushings, and firmer stabilizers, all right? It did everything it could to stay on the ground. And even though this brochure had me wanting one so bad, the car was relatively untouched by the market because people just didn't see it as a car that they wanted to pick up. The Spec V had a super aggressive front end that looked pretty similar to a GTR, and that's really why a lot of people ended up liking these trims the most, especially for people like you and people like me, because it looked like a bubbly GTR, and it still had side still extensions, which gave it a sharper lower body line. You could see the headlights have reminiscent cues of the GTR. You could see that the taillights in certain generations had some of the cues of a GTR, and if you looked at the side, you could still see that similarity, especially as it went through its age. And this generation looked pretty damn good. It had sleek headlights, a curved trunk, a raked windshield, clean grille, and an okay interior that they updated with plastics that didn't crack every 2 seconds. This generation Sentra, specifically the SER and the Spec V, was a certified wheel slap and banger. It had better seats, plastics, audio, headlights, double-walled exhaust, and a slew of comfy parts that made it a great entry-level car, especially for people that wanted to jump into a Nissan that could still get some pretty decent gas mileage. If you're looking to pick up a Sentra, specifically one that might be a little bit older, get the SER or get the Spec V. Garage factoid, the Spec V and not the V-Spec was a designation play because the GTR V-Spec Skyline was essentially how they used the nomenclature, was reintroduced in the USA in R35 as a GTR Spec V. Now the reason that they did that is because apparently the Spec V designation is due to the fact that Nissan can't use the V-Spec title, so they just did a little Uno switcheroo card with the title, and that's why it's called V-Spec. There you go. The Spec V and SER trims would remain in the lineup into the next generation, but it got a little weird. Sixth generation got a little funky, okay? And I think the fifth generation just holds something spicy in my heart that I just will never be able to give up. But the sixth generation is where they became to only add salt as the trim flavor for this car, and future generations were starting to get rid of it entirely. You could pick up a sixth gen in the SER, but ultimately most people remember the SER and the Spec V as a fifth generation car. And that's the thing, the Nissan Sentra SER, specifically the Spec V, has almost always been underrated. It's a car that was a gem, but for some reason people just never really picked it up. It was fun, and sure, it had the platform of the Sunny, but at least the first generation, but it was still a cool car. It still was a sedan-inspired GTR. You could brag about the fact that it was a sedan-inspired GTR, and they were practical, they were reliable. They were practical, and they had 2 extra doors. And because of the reason that we're not gonna spend any more time talking about the history of the car, you want some of that, go grab a thesaurus or something. We're gonna be talking about you wanting to own one of these things, all right? That's what we're here for. We're here to help you decide if a front-wheel drive 20-year-old Nissan is the play. So you want a Nissan Sentra SER or Spec V? Well, okay, we can maybe talk about this just a couple, 2-3 minutes, okay? Set down your Plasti Dip, grab your favorite plastic restore, or maybe even a Skyline t-shirt, because we're gonna sit down and talk about what it's like to actually own one of these bad boys. Owning the SER or the Spec V is like finding a performance bargain, except it's not one many know about or actually really even brag about. There's front-wheel drive, which can turn quite a few people away, but the fun color, the manual transmission, the LSD out of the Spec V, and it's a pretty decent car to boot, makes it actually a really great pick if you are looking for something that's like a conservative amount of fun. The pricing has come down as well, which has made these things a damn bargain. 6,600 RPM, higher compression engine, big old rotors, and all that good stuff make it actually a car that you can modify as well. You can throw different brakes on it, suspension, wheels, tires, intake, exhaust, all that good stuff, and you can still get a pretty fun car that's not gonna cost an arm and a leg. But not only that, the looks are banging. Look at the 5th generation, throw some period correct mods, clean up the headlights, grab some classic like BBSs or Gram lights, or maybe even some artists, you know what I'm saying? It's really hard for me to wink when I was a child. And Michelin tires with some coilovers and you're pretty much set to go. And because it's an early 2000s car, you pretty much just have to focus on cleaning up the glass, restoring the plastics, and you're pretty much all set to go. The biggest thing with the Nissan SE R and the Spec V is finding one. And you can find them pretty much all over the States, but when you do pick one up, you're almost gonna be one of the few that you'll ever see actually running around with them. They're not a super popular platform these days, and there's really no reason for it. If you're looking to pick one up, I definitely recommend a 5th generation, and I definitely recommend grabbing a Spec V. These are the cars that are known for people that just wanna have something fun, but are gonna be able to actually get in it and make sure that it starts up every time, goes through the gears every time, because at the end of the day, it's still a Nissan, and it's before they introduced all the weird transmission stuff that they ended up doing with it in some of their SUVs and CUVs, because that's weird. But what do you think about the Nissan Sentra SE R or Spec V? Let us know below, and of course, let us know what you'd like us to talk about next. If you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, be sure to hit us up over at fitmentindustries.com. Be sure you can build up your car right now. You can pay it off later with your tax returns using 0% Affirm. You can pick up a t-shirt or a hoodie and get entered into a giveaway. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And of course, I love you. We'll see you later. Peace.